esteemed guests, and a warm welcome to this pivotal event co-organized by decoco, the Colonial Research Group at HAU, and the Berlin Student Collective as part of our lecture series, Shifting Paradigm, Epistemic Resistance. This series has been inspired by our deep-seated interest and concern regarding the ongoing event in Palestine, as well as the rise of political authoritarianism in Europe and across the globe. We are honored to host a diverse assembly of participants from various disciplines and regions of the world, all converging here today. Through these lectures, our aim is to establish an open and critical platform for re-evaluating dominant intellectual paradigms. This initiative stems from our commitment to social justice and the imperative of incorporating a broad spectrum of perspective to fully grasp the complexity of these subjects. We encourage you to discover more about our initiative and future events by visiting our website at decoco.net and engaging with us on Twitter using the hashtag decoco and hashtag epistemic resistance. These details will also be available in the chat sections of this event. With this introduction, it is my distinct pleasure to extend a cordial welcome to the inaugural speaker of our series. Professor Moshe Zuckermann. Professor Zuckermann is a distinguished sociologist and professor emeritus of history and philosophy at Tel Aviv University. His scholarly work encompassed a vast range of subjects, including German social history from the 18th to the 20th century, the history of Jews in Germany, nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the intricacies of German-Jewish and German-Israeli relations. His recent books are Anti-Semite, An Accusation as an Instrument of Power, published in 2010, Israel's Fate, How Zionism is Dividing Its Downfall of 2014, and The Omnipresent Anti-Semites of the German Sphere or the German Sphere of the Past of 2018, all written in German. Today, Professor Zuckermann will enlighten us with his lecture entitled The Omnipresent Anti-Semitism or the German Sphere of the Past. We eagerly anticipate an insightful presentation, which will be followed by a discussion round. The presentation will last 30 minutes. Then for the Q&A slot, which will not be recorded, we have 40 minutes. Due to time restriction, I will ask you to keep your questions short. You then can write your question in the F&A box or raise your hand. Professor Moshe, we are profoundly grateful for your presence here today. The floor is now yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm myself quite happy to be here with you. I hope that we all will be happy after you've heard my words, because this is not taken for granted. The topic that we are dealing with may be misleading, because this is, it was an ironic title of a book that I published back in 2018, the allgegenwärtige Antisemit, the ever-present anti-Semite, which I didn't mean to be a true or a real category, but the fact that it is ideologically spread and instrumentalized for reasons that I will try to elaborate on in the coming 25-30 minutes. I'd like to start with the fact that anti-Semitism, as well as Islamophobia, as well as racism, as in fascism, in any form, in any kind of appearance, has to be fought. I'm asked not to be misunderstood in this when I will be talking about the ideological dimension of using the category of anti-Semitism. That will not mean that I try to say that there is no anti-Semitism in the world. Quite on the contrary, because I'm sure that there is anti-Semitism in the world. I'm very much concerned about the fact that the way that it is instrumentalized nowadays is not very is not very helping to fight anti-Semitism, as well as Islamophobia, as well as racism of any kind, and fascism, and so on. So let me start with the fact that when we're talking about Germany, and I will mainly be talking about Germany because although I would be able to do extend it and to talk about Israel and Palestine, but I was asked to talk about Germany, that there is a good reason why the category of anti-Semitism is, especially in Germany, of course, something very sensitive and something that has been taken under account. And if you remember Angela Merkel standing in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament back in 2008, and saying that Israel's security is part of the raison of the German state, you can try to understand what she meant, but it is quite an irritating thing when she says it, because of course Israel's security is Israel's raison. It's the raison of the Israel state and not of the German state. But on the other hand, taking into account what happened to Jews in Europe, especially in Poland, but by the responsibility of Germany, meaning the Holocaust, meaning the Shoah, which was caused, of course, by the Germans, you can understand that in a certain point in time, they started to think how can the relation between Germany and Jews, I'm emphasizing this, Germany and Jews, because the Holocaust happened to Jews, how that can be, in German you say Wiedergutmachung, how can that be, I don't know, compensate or something like that. I don't believe that the Holocaust can be compensated, and in this respect, I'm not going to go into that. But having stressed out this special relation between Germany and the Jews, now we have to understand that we're talking about something which is going beyond this relationship. And this is something that is not very often understood in Germany. And I tried to explain it and to elaborate on it on many and numerous occasions, but obviously not very successfully. Anyway, what I'm meaning to say is Judaism and Zionism and Israel are three different categories which are to be separated from each other. This is not to mean that there is no certain kind of affiliation and connection between Judaism, Zionism, and Israel. But you have to understand that Judaism is something that goes beyond Zionism, and Zionism is an ideology that pertains, of course, to Israel, but it goes beyond Israel. I'm saying that in order to point out that we have to separate between the categories, because this is the main important thing that I'm going to say today, because not all the Jews are Zionists, not all the Zionists are Israelis, and that is a very important addition, and not all the Israelis are Jews. I'm repeating again, not all the Jews are Zionists, not all the Zionists are Israelis, and not all the Israelis are Jews. Now, how can I say that not all the Jews are Zionists? Because we know that there are Jews that are not Zionists. For example, Orthodox Jews, for reasons that has to do with Jewish theology, are not considered themselves to be Jews. In certain cases, there are ultra-Orthodox Jews see themselves even as anti-Zionist Jews. How come? Because this is a theological thing that we have to understand. In Judaism, Messiah has not arrived yet. as opposed to Christianity, where Messiah obviously has arrived. In Judaism, Messiah has not arrived yet. That means that for Orthodox Jews, for people who are keeping up with the 613 kind of commandments that we have in Judaism, that for these people, ultra-Orthodox or Orthodox Jews, the mere idea of Zionism, meaning the foundation of a state Israel, is something that cannot be acceptable, because in the theology of Judaism, the foundation of a Jewish state, the foundation of a Jewish kingdom, can only be allowed when Messiah has arrived. But in Judaism, it has not arrived yet, and that means that for Orthodox Jews, it is simply inconceivable that Jewish people would want to build a Jewish state. It's not something that you can accept in the religion of Orthodox Jews. Ultra-Orthodox Jews goes even further and say it is a sin against God's will that the state of Israel has been founded, and the anti-Zionism means that they say that the mere fact that you thought about the ideas of building a Jewish state before the Messiah has arrived, this mean idea means that you worked against God's will. This is quite, for a secular person as myself, this is of course not kind of an argument that I could accept, but that means only that if you're talking about Jews, and even about Jews who are religiously seeing themselves as Jews, you have to take under account, you have to consider the fact that they don't accept the Jewish state. When they are participating nowadays with certain parties in the Israeli Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, they're doing that without accepting, or most of the time not accepting, ministerial positions, because they don't acknowledge the Jewish state. And at that point, I would like to distinguish between non-being a Zionist and being an anti-Zionist, which are two different things. Not to being Zionist is somebody who says, I'm not believing in Zionism. To be anti-Zionist means that you think that historically Zionism shouldn't have come to the world at all. The mere fact that it came to the world is a sin against God. Anti-Zionism says that you have to eliminate Zionism as a whole. There are the ultra-Orthodox Jews who think in that categories. Most of the Orthodox Jews today are not anti-Zionists, but they are not Zionists, meaning there is a state of Israel. We don't recognize it. We live in it for certain reasons. The reasons are practical reasons, but we don't accept it. Another category of Jews who are not Zionists are, for example, Jewish communists and socialists. In the past Jewish history, the so-called Bundists, the Bundisten, were believing socialists and communists, and they thought that the emancipation of the Jews should not take place within a separate or special kind of or tour or course of emancipation, but it should be part of the all-over international global emancipation of men. That means the Jews should be emancipated within the idea of the international emancipation of mankind. These are only two very pregnant, very important categories of Jews who are not seeing themselves as Zionists. But you can even say that A lot of people, for example, the United States nowadays may say that it's okay that there is a state of Israel, but we are not Zionists. As a matter of fact, you can say that most of the American people don't see, American Jewish people don't see themselves as Zionists. I even would dare to say that many of the Russian Jews who's been under the education of communism did not consider themselves to be Zionists. After communism has collapsed, that has changed in a way, but I'm just trying to point out that these kind of Jews are not Zionists, and that it is possible for Jews not to be Zionists. Not, and this is the second thing, not all the Zionists are Israelis. Many people who believe in Zionism and believe that people should acknowledge the state of Israel are not living in Israel. Many of the Zionists in the world are not living in Israel. I sometimes have the feeling that more Zionists in the world are not living in Israel than Zionists who are living in Israel. I'm saying that because it is important to distinguish between Israelis and Zionists, because if you're not living in Israel, you're not serving here in the army, you're not paying here taxes, you're not conducting your professional career here, you're not living, as a matter of fact, physically in Israel, then you may be a Zionist, but you're not an Israeli. So I'm trying to distinguish between Zionists and Israelis, and I would like to add that I think that many Israelis today are Zionists, but don't consider themselves to be Zionists in a way that they say every day, 3 times a day, I'm a Zionist, I'm a Zionist. They're just living their lives in Israel without stressing out their Zionism as an ideology. Having said that, I have to add to that not all the Israelis are Jews. You remember that I said not all the Jews are Zionists, not all the Zionists are Israelis, but not all the Israelis are Jews either, because there are about 20 to 25% of the Israeli citizens who are not Jews, who are Palestinians who remained in Israel after the Nakba, after the catastrophe of the Palestinian people back in the war of 1948, where some 650 to 70,000, maybe even more, were persecuted. Some of them fled, other of them were, pushed out of Israel. But those of them who remained in Israel, about 25% of nowadays Israeli population, remained in Israel as Israeli citizens. I have to add as second-rate Israeli citizens, but still Israeli citizens. And in that respect, you can say, well, if you're talking about the Jewish state or the state of the Jews, well, there is a big minority of people here, of citizens who are not Jews. So if that's true, if it's true that not all the Jews are Zionists, not all the Zionists are Israelis, and not all the Israelis are Jews, you may demand that the category of Jews, Zionism, or Judaism, Zionism, and Israel has to be treated separately or distinguished between them. And that goes all the more so for the negation of these 3 categories. If Judaism is one thing, anti-Judaism, which is anti-Semitism, and Zionism and anti-Zionism, and Israel and the critique of Israel these 3 categories have to be treated separately too. I hope that I'm clear that if Judaism, Zionism, and Israel have to be treated separately or as different categories, that goes all the more so for the negation of it. Anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and critique of Israel are not the same. This would have been not a big problem if not in Germany in the last, I would say, especially in the last 25, 30 years, a culture of discourse or discourse has been established in which this is not seen as I just put it, but on the contrary, people see Israel as being the state of the Jews. That means that every Jew believes in Israel, and as Zionism is the state ideology of Israel, that every Jew has to be Zionist. Having said that, they established a definition of anti-Semitism that tries to say that if you hate Jews, if you persecute Jews, and so on, you are anti-Semitic. But if you are anti-Zionist and if you don't like Israeli politics, you are anti-Semite too. Now, I have to say that a lot of people who are not Jews hate Israeli politics. For example, myself. I fighting against Israel's politics for the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years because of what it is. Not only in principle, the Zionism, but I'm talking especially after 1967 because of the quite barbaric occupation regime in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, in the Golan Heights. It's less important, and there used to be, of course, the Sinai Peninsula, but it's not important. Important to our case nowadays is especially the West Bank in which a major part of the Palestinians live, and of course the Gaza Strip, in which we have nowadays in recent days, the war that is going on. What has happened in Germany, that because of that equation of Zionism and Judaism and Israel, that in order to silence people who are critical of or are critical of Israeli politics, even sometimes critical of the mere existence of Israel, but this is a minority. I'm not thinking that many Palestinians that I know in the West Bank or even in the Hamas Gaza Strip that are really contesting the mere existence of Israel. Hamas is probably contesting the mere existence of Israel, but that does not go for the major part of the Palestinians, especially not in the West Bank. In Germany, because of that, they see any critique of Israel, they is the establishment, the political establishment, they is the homogeneous media, part of the media, especially the Springer press, as it's called. They are the Jewish communities in Germany who are collaborating with the Israeli Foreign Ministry. And they are what I don't know whether they still exist, but they used to be the so-called Anti-Deutschen, the anti-Germans, who, of course, were the fiercest of the people who were condemning everybody who was criticizing Israel and criticizing its politics and criticizing Zionism. That led to a culture of really persecution. I don't know how to put it, because everything that is nowadays in Germany connected to criticism of Israel is put as being anti-Semitic by the mere logic that if you are critical of the politics of Israel, you are critical of the existence of Israel, which is, of course, a complete bullshit, which is not true. You can be, as a Jew and as a non-Jew, be very critical of Israel. You can be a Zionist and be critical of Israel's politics. You can be Jewish and not non-Zionist and being critical or in favor of Israel's politics. Every combination is possible, not in Germany, and not in the German used definition of anti-Semitism, especially not in what is called now Israel-bezogener Antisemitismus, which means to say that there is an anti-Semitism which is directly connected to Israel. Well, I have to say that every decent human being nowadays, when it sees what Israel is doing in the West Bank and doing how it blockaded Gaza for the last 20 years, every decent person must be critical of Israel's politics because of the occupation, because of the repression going on, because of the barbarity of treating the Palestinians there. But it has to be, even on the quite theoretical level, critical of it, because Israel is all the time transgressing the human rights and performing permanently war crimes. And if you're not critical of Israel, then you have to ask yourself why you're not critical of Israel. And I'm afraid to say that most of the people that I'm talking to in Germany, when I'm saying, why are you not speaking out that you are critical of Israel, they tell me all the time that they are not able to do that because they will be framed as anti-Semitic if they'll do that. And I'm asking them, are you anti-Semites? And they say, no, of course not. And then I ask, what do you care about what people tell about you, how they relate to you? And they say, you don't understand, because if you are framed in Germany as an anti-Semite, you are condemned. You are politically condemned. You are socially condemned. You are academically condemned. You are professionally condemned. You are in a position where you are not sure whether you keep up your position socially, politically, professionally, academically, and so on, if you are framed as being anti-Semitic. It came to a stage and to a level of instrumentalizing this term of anti-Semitism that even Germans, even younger German, I mean, I'm an old man now, but even younger German attack me as being a self-hating Jew when I'm criticizing Israel, or even saying that I am an anti-Semitic Jew. I have to stress in this context, I don't understand how people can think that I, as the son of Auschwitz survivors, could be called an anti-Semitic, because I mean, major part of my family was exterminated because of anti-Semitism. But it is the level of nonchalance in which this term is used nowadays, and the way that they are trying to really to censor you in what you're doing and to not let you talk. I mean, I have been witnessing a lot of times that the city government did not allow events in which I participated to take place. I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people who are criticizing Israel that are not allowed to perform their events and giving the talks, because the city is not giving them the permission to do that. I could give you some examples if you want to hear later on. So if I may sum up this little talk, I could talk about it now for hours. I'm not very happy to have to do it in English, because as you may have noticed, my English is not very good. But if I have to sum up what I just said, I try to say again, one has to distinguish between Judaism, Zionism, and Israel. If you translate it into the negation of these three categories, you have to distinguish between anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and Israel critique. And the reason for it, the main reason for it, because you have to consider the mere fact, the empirical fact, that not all the Jews are Zionists, not all the Zionists are Israelis, and more important, not all the Israelis are Jews. And if you understand that, you can understand why the fact that you put the thing together and and build a connection between them may be very often just an ideological tool in order to silence people, in order not to let people to criticize Israel for what Israel should and must be criticized if you are somebody who thinks in emancipatory categories. So, Sasha, this is what I just had to say. Maybe you take over now.
Mhm. Thank you very much, Professor Moshe. It is so important for us that you clarify these concepts, because I think, and that when we see the media, it is so difficult to understand, because none of the media or in the public debate we see this kind of clarification. So it's, for us, it's very important. It's like a kind of educational effort you made to clarify us these concepts. And this lead me to I will start maybe the question. I will encourage all the participants to think about a question and put it in the